This is The Final Word, Season 17, Episode 4. It's the middle of October. Jeff Lemon and Bharat Sundaresan with you. Adam's got some other things to deal with this week. I'm doing my last show for a couple of weeks because I will be plunging deeper into the United States of America. The show is brought to you by Ambassador Cruise Line, giving you the chance to cruise with cricket legends this December. They're not us. They're that we would not describe ourselves that way, but some might describe Bharat Sundaresan as a cricket legend. They might. He couldn't necessarily stop them doing that. Nice to see your face from Adelaide. I assume it looks like you're in your office in the hills.
I certainly am Jeff Lemon, and I have one of the two dogs here. And before we go anywhere, I hope you've not been eating any dogs or cats. And or do I need Olivia to be just leave the room? If that's how it's been, I will do that because I hear that's what's happening where you are right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not. Let's say it hasn't been borne out by the evidence necessarily, but nor have I been eating hot dogs because I'm pretty suspicious of those. But I'm coming to you from a shitty motel in Erie, Pennsylvania,
Ah.
where there was a big Democratic rally last night with Kamala Harris. So I stopped into that as an observer, and heading on further down the road, probably go to Pittsburgh later today, and then up into Michigan, Wisconsin the next bit. So there's plenty going on. A little something that might be slightly of interest to some of the people listening in. I'm about to start doing some writing about this just for my own sort of brain, just to get out some of what I'm seeing along the way. So this is sort of working towards a possible book project later, but I'm going to do some writing. I'm going to try to write as close to every day as I can through the next 3 weeks or so. So I'm posting that up on a Patreon thing. It'll be a separate one to the Final Word one. So it'll be patreon.com/Jeff Lemon. But it'll be free to read up there. But if you want to throw me a few bucks for petrol money, then you can do that as well. So that's, for people who have the crossover of interest between cricket and politics, of which there are quite a few, including me. And hopefully by having said this on the show, I will make myself actually publish the first piece, which I haven't quite finished writing. But so I've got to get the website live before this episode comes out. That's given me a deadline, which is, it's somewhat difficult to publish and edit and write when you're mostly driving hours and hours every day and not necessarily sleeping inside, although I am tonight. Once in a while, I get to splash out and get a dodgy motel for a night just so I can get a PowerPoint and a shower. But it's going to be an interesting few weeks coming up.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to reading about your journeys. I've really been hooked onto the US election since the time I was there, when I spent a week driving around as well, as you know, and listening to. I don't know whether it was the rental car or who had been driving it before I got it. They only had right-wing Republican radio stations on it, so I got to know a lot about. And this is around the time I think Biden, the first debate had taken place, and the whole Biden thing had the shit had hit the fan. So yeah, I've been hooked ever since. I watched both the big conventions from start to finish. I mean, the Republican one obviously purely for Hulk Hogan, as you would imagine, but for other reasons as well. So no, it's and a shitty motel in the US. Like every time I've stayed in one of those, I've always wondered how many people were killed there. So I think it's just part of it, isn't it? Like, I always check under the bed, and I always regret checking
Yeah.
under the bed. Yeah.
Yeah, you never want to. Thankfully, this bed seems to go all the way to the floor, so
Oh,
I
I
don't think there's any chance for anything to get under it unless there's a
it
secret
always feels
compartment
better
or
if that's the
something.
case.
But yeah, it's been odd being in the middle of it. I was at a JD Vance rally a couple of days ago, the Harris one last night, and I'll be at a Tim Walsh one later on today, and then I'll be sort of veering off the formal campaign trail and heading north to speak to some other people who are less directly campaign related over the next few days. But all of that's coming up. If you want to keep an eye on that, patreon.com/Jeff Lemon. It might be on my old website as well. But anyway, that's where you can read the things for free if you want to follow along with what I'm doing, or chip in if you want. At live shows, we've got our suite of live shows coming up this summer. A reminder: Perth on the 21st of November, Melbourne on the 29th, Adelaide December 5, Brisbane December 12, Sydney January 7. I can formally announce that in Adelaide this year, Glenn Maxwell will be our guest. And he's also likely to pop up and make a couple of appearances at one or two of the other shows. Melbourne looks most likely, maybe Sydney, to do some book signings and just have a chat and say hello to people. So, yeah, but he will be, so there'll be other people involved in those shows, but he's the formal guest in Adelaide, which means I might as well invite you as well, Barrett Cinder Racing. You should join us in Adelaide on stage at some point, because you are the mayor of the town.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I'm getting mightier by the day as a South Australian, as you know. So yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there, Jeff Lemon. I remember the first time you guys did a live show in Adelaide. If you remember, I was a pretty face at the door, and I brought in a lot of people. So yeah, it'll be quite a transition to go from there to joining you guys on the stage. Well, whereas look where the special guest from that evening is poor Jason Gillespie. He's been dealing with Pakistan cricket for the last 2-3 weeks. Poor
we will come to that. We'll come to that in the second half. We've got plenty going on the international scene with England, Pakistan, India, New Zealand, Bangladesh, Shakib Al Hassan. But we'll go Australian for the first segment. The Women's World Cup nearing its business end. We won't spend too much time on that because the Daily Show with Daniel Norcross and Cameron Ponsonby is coming out every day, and they've been doing a wonderful job from the UAE. Notable, though, that New Zealand made it through after being such a battler of a team for the last number of years. Good on them for being able to rise above their modest components and get through to the semis. They knocked out India effectively, who missed their chance. It's an interesting one as to where that goes from here. Australia had moments of looking vulnerable and then still being able to find a way to pull it out of the bag. Elisa Healy might be back for the semi-final, might not. Taylor Velamick's done her shoulder, which is a massive shame. Basically, any other team that lost, say, Healy, Velamick, quality players would be sunk. But for Australia, they're fine because Beth Mooney can keep wicket. Anyone else can captain. There are so many leadership candidates, and pretty much anyone else in that team can open the batting. So you can keep following the daily eps, which is all possible due to the Patreon page that funds the show. So if you want to join on and help with that, patreon.com/thefinalword. What do you make of? Give me the India angle. Is it time for Harmanpreet? I mean, this Indian team, you have to feel like they're underachievers over the last 7 years. Most of which, like she's the surge of inspiration in 2017 with that crazy innings in the World Cup semi-final, the One-Day World Cup semi. But they lose that final when they should have won it, and then they've gone on to they lost the final at the MCG. Lost the Commonwealth Games final, didn't make it to the final of the T20 tournament in South Africa when they should have done again, and they've been knocked out at the group stage here when they really should have gone through. They feel like an underachieving team given the disparity of resources that they have versus almost everybody else who's not Australia.
And the first T20 World Cup since the start of the WPL, so there was a lot of expectations from this Indian team. There were a few players who came through because of the WPL or from the WPL, and obviously mostly the team was made up of regulars who, a lot of people who follow the Indian women's team felt like they had peaked and this was their time. And I myself wrote a column before the start of the World Cup saying, look, the last time Australia looked like they were in line to win a fourth straight T20 World Cup. West Indies obviously beat them. We were both there. But it didn't feel like it was the start of a new chapter, right? Or the end of the Australian mind. It felt like an aberration. And I wrote basically that if there is a team, and it looks most likely that it will be India, who finally kind of dethrone Australia and once again stop them from a four-peat, this could probably mean that the rest of the pack, at least led by India, have caught up. But, well, like you said earlier, Australia just keep doing what Australia do. And like, just on Australia, I was just looking at the stats. What if you look at the top 15 batters? There are just two Australians in there, Lee Sperry and Beth Mooney. But if you look at the bowlers, like four of the top 10 are Australian, and it's like they've just dominated with the ball. And India at least
Mm.
managed to go past 100. No other team had done that. But I mean, the fact that India have failed to even go past the group stage, one part of me is super happy with the reactions from India, that people are super pissed off and genuinely pissed off, saying, "Hey, I mean, it's very similar to how the men's team would be treated if they got knocked out." I mean, go back to that 2021 World Cup, also in the UAE, when they were knocked out very early on by Pakistan and New Zealand. There was a lot of angst, and I like that angst. For way too long with Indian women's cricket, it's there's always been that the patronizing element to it, of like, oh, but it's still like, the Indian women's team, they have to overcome so much. They do,
Mm.
obviously they do, but I like that angst. Obviously, when you talk about that level of angst, you will get the idiots who'll come and say, oh, like, take that money and put it into men's domestic cricket and more grassroots cricket, as if they need any more money in men's cricket in India. But I think you kind of take
Yeah.
that. I would prefer that rather than just like, that apathy or just people not caring. So that's good. But yeah, I don't know. Like, after the IPL, the men's IPL started, for India had to wait a long time before they won another T20 World Cup. So the whole fear of failure and all of that was spoken of. But just in that first game, they did look nervous. And once you lose by
Mm.
that kind of a margin against New Zealand, and they look nervous again in that run chase against Pakistan, where the net run rate had an issue or could have been an issue, they just didn't look like switched on. And yeah, and you get knocked out. But hopefully it leads to further scrutiny, and it's not just about the coach and Harmanpreet Kaur. But yeah, I mean, look, it's if this was like, you could kind of draw parallels between Virat Kohli and Harmanpreet Kaur. Virat Kohli, uh, the number of times he failed to win an ICC tournament as captain, and eventually he gets replaced, or not replaced. His time has come. He leaves, however you want to kind of look at it. But maybe the time has come for her to be moved on
Mm.
from. So yeah, and it's good. I think it is good. Like, people are getting angry with India's women's team.
So we're just waiting for the last game to sort of define who's gone through. So New Zealand are through, Australia are through, and then there's a West Indies England game that will decide whether West Indies or South Africa
Yeah.
would go through behind England. So that's coming up pretty shortly. It will have happened by the time this episode goes out. We'll know the semi-finalists there. Tune into the daily if you want to keep up with that action. Cameron Green, Adam and I spent a long time talking last week about whether he would play as a specialist bat, whether he would bat at 4, what would happen, what that would mean for Mitch Marsh. All of it redundant, all of it out the window, because he's getting surgery on his back and will miss the entire summer, so 6 months at least. The quote was, Cam has a unique defect in an adjacent area to the fracture that is believed to be contributing to the injury. So he's getting the back fusing surgery that Shane Bond got
Mm.
and that James Pattinson got. We had Pattinson on the podcast way back in 2019 telling us about that procedure and what it meant for his back problems. So basically it's about, like, he could have probably played as a batter
Mm.
this season, but this surgery will give him the chance to remain as an all-rounder long term. It'll potentially allow him to keep bowling, which shifts everything else around. Basically, it means number 4 opens up, which means Smith will drop back down to number 4. So interesting about, Smith so talked up wanting the new challenge and wanting to do the different thing of opening, did it for 4 tests and then said he didn't like it. He felt too rushed coming in early, but he also was saying that at number 4, he felt like he waited too long to come into bat. So
Mm.
really, is all of this just him angling for number 3 again? It's the only spot where I'll possibly feel comfortable. But the interview that he did with Daniel Bredig in a box said that Marnus Labuschagne and Usman Khawaja both wanted him at 4 as well. It's just interesting the way the conversation around it has evolved. And then I guess the knock on for that, where Mitchell Marsh needs to be a bowling option, they've said that he will be a bowling option, but if he's not available, for strong reasons, it's Aaron Hardy who's likely to come in, although Bo Webster's making a case in the Sheffield Shield. So the green missing part it's locked in one bit, which is that Smith will go to 4, but there's an opener's spot. There's the possibility that they could still opt to get someone else into that middle order and move Labuschagne up. There are all-rounder permutations if Marsh isn't able to bowl. So there are still quite a lot of moving parts in that Australian Test side.
I actually don't think there is. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about the whole all-rounder spot, but I did a bit of digging into how much Cameron Green has actually bowled, in the last 2 summers. Like, obviously, like every other Australian bowler or any Australian who touched a ball against England in that Ashes 3 summers ago, he ended up with 17 wickets at 15. But since he obviously didn't play against Pakistan last year, he was out of the side. But in 6 tests, he's bowled 66.1 overs. He's taken 9 wickets in crucial wickets. He took the fifer at the MCG against South Africa. But and which was my question to George Bailey. Based on that, I said, like, is it a luxury having him as a genuine all-rounder, or is it a necessity? I mean, do you think that with an aging pace attack and Nathan Lyon, you need that fifth bowling option, or otherwise, like, you feel like there is the combination is really affected? And I mean, that's the question I asked George Bailey, but even like just chatting to the others in the team management on the side, I think they're pretty comfortable not having that, or just having Mitchell Marsh, Travis Head, and Marnus Labuschagne between them, averaging 5, 7 to 9 overs per innings. They're confident with Hazelwood, Stark, and Cummins doing the job, especially when you consider the kind of pitches we've seen in the last 2 summers in Australia. So I think, considering Mitchell Marsh has become the crisis man for them with the bat, even if he can give like 4 or 5 hours, which he did, like against Pakistan. If you see last summer, he bowled 21 overs across 3 tests, and he bowled only 4 once Green came back into the side. So I can see them just happy with a specialist opener, and not be too worried about the fifth bowling option. And that's what I'm hearing, like from my chats with from people within the camp, and I think it's with the Steve Smith thing as well. Uh, I do wonder. Like, I had a chat with Andrew McDonald right after the Christchurch test, and at that point, this was still 8 months ago. I mean, his feeling was, hey, look, we have to treat him like any other opener, and any other opener, you'd give him 6, 7 tests before you take a call, right? Whether it's working or not. And I do believe that if, say, this summer was last summer, that is, you had 3 tests against Pakistan and 2 tests against West Indies, they might well have stuck with Steve Smith, or Steve Smith himself might have continued as opener and then taken a call after the first series. Now, because it's India and because it's also a 5-match test series, it is a huge gamble to go in with Steve Smith, or for Steve Smith to go in as opener. And what if it doesn't click after the second test? Where do you go then? And it's obviously complicated doing it mid-series. So I think this just makes a lot more sense. And as we were told by George Bailey, I think the question from Dan Cherney was about Cam Green, but George Bailey said, hang on. He jumped in and said Steve Smith is the one who had asked for this, and he's asked for it even before the whole Cam Green news broke out. So they were pretty clear with how it worked out. And and I think, but I do wonder, Jeff, if Steve Smith steers Australia home to that victory, and it would have been a great victory against the West Indies at the Gabba. I wonder how we would have looked at, or how he would have looked at his opening, even though he didn't get runs, because you know how it is, like
Totally.
one test win and the whole narrative changes. So, but yeah, I mean, I think this going forward,
and 1 test 100, 8 more, he finishes 8 short of 100, and they're about 8 short of the win. So he gets 2 more off the outside edge, brings up a ton, match-winning ton, 9 down, having basically carried his bat. Well, then he would have been being chaired through the streets of Brisbane. So
yeah, exactly, and I mean, there's no better time than now to talk about Michael Neser as well. So I did hear from I mean, I wouldn't say who, but I did hear from one of the selectors, like after I wasted no time in tweeting about Michael Neeser and start like restarting the campaign, saying, "Oh, you
Mm,
went in really early, didn't you?" And to their credit, I was given, as the president of the hashtag Nisa Must Play campaign, I was given a very valid explanation uh,
mm,
about why that might not happen, unfortunately. And I think it is to do with the kind of pitches that we've been seeing in Australia for the last 2 summers, where there seems to be the feeling that batting needs to be the focus, like, or stabilizing the batting, that is. So Alex Carey at six on pitches where, like, say, the average scores are 280, 300, might be a risk. And they're just more comfortable with having, Marsh at six, Carey at seven, and a specialist opener. Like, and we'll obviously talk about who
mm.
that specialist opener could be. But yeah, so I might,
We will.
me and Michael Nisa might have to wait another day so for
Mm,
our dream to come true.
okay.